Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the latest news on attempts by Nigel Farage and Reform UK to turn themselves into a professional party with local grassroots support in order to better target more seats at the next general election. But instead of slowly building up a ground campaign in order to win local council seats and then use the new councillors to build up local groups of activists ready for the next general election, it looks like Farage has decided that that's too much effort for too little reward. So in the fashion of the guy who could never be asked to turn up, for example, to fisheries meetings in Brussels when he was our representative there, and the guy who can't be bothered to put on surgeries in Clacton, he's gone for the easy option. Not sure it'll work though. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So one of the things that Reform UK told their supporters in the wake of the general election at their conference, which was completely true, is that they don't have the grassroots infrastructure to target very many seats. The seats they won, they said, were the ones where they were able to get people in there and campaign hard, and they weren't able to do that across very many other seats at all. You know, the fact that they got the third greatest vote share in the election is largely worthless in a first past the post system. So in order to work with the electoral system we have, they need to focus on winnable seats, and they need to get organised activists campaigning hard in those areas at the next general election if they want to build. But as I've been saying for a while, Reform UK are a very top-down party. They get all of their appeal from overexposure in the national media, led by literally a handful of bigots. What they need are groups of people knocking on doors like most days of the week for weeks on end during an election campaign. That requires local organisers. It's not nice having to trudge the streets all the time, knocking on doors, and then every second door them telling you to like you sling your hook. You know, for normal political parties, it is councillors, it's local councillors who lead these groups. They're the ones who do the organising. They're the ones who sort of cajole people into trudging those streets, knocking on those doors, asking questions, delivering messages, having abuse hurled at them. This is one reason why Sunak was attacked for not holding the general election on the same day as the local elections this year. It meant that the Tories lost another load of councillors, weakening their own ground operation when the general election was eventually called. So Zia Yusuf, who is Reform UK's chair, has said that they need councillors to lead these efforts. Problem is they have like 28. Compare this with the 813 that the Green Party of England and Wales have. So Reform UK are going to need to do really well in the local elections over the next few years to build up. And next year's local elections is a really big one. And you think to yourself, so what is the prospect of Reform winning hundreds more councillors in the next few years? And as I say, particularly next year is a really huge one. Well, if the Tories continue to fail, it might be possible. The reason more parties do well in local elections is because voters believe they can. You know, Reform UK's success in the general election could instill some more belief in some voters. Of course, it might just encourage more tactical voting against them as well. But it would certainly be a challenge. So, according to reports in the Express and the Telegraph, Farage has decided on another plan in parallel, which is exactly the sort of lazy thing a toad like him would favour. He's apparently just written to a load of Conservative councillors and asked them if they wouldn't mind defecting because winning the seats the normal way is too much effort for him. It's not exactly what he said, but it seems to be the gist. Interestingly, both the Express and the Telegraph headlines say that Farage has written to every Tory councillor who is up for re-election next May. The angle he's taken is that he's coming for their seats anyway, and at the moment you're all obsessed with who's going to lead you, and you've got a choice between someone who's got this like Damascene conversion or someone who refuses to leave the ECHR. So they may as well join Reform UK in order to be made their candidate and retain their place on the council, because we're taking your seat off you. So if you want that seat, you need to be a Reform UK candidate, which might work with some, I suppose. But the major advantage, of course, would be for Reform UK. See, they would get a locally recognised name standing for them because they're an existing councillor, and assuming that that councillor is seen as doing a good job as a councillor, then that will help Reform UK win. They will also get someone, assuming they do win, who is experienced at organising local campaigns and may even persuade some other local Conservatives, particularly those who go around doing the old door knocking, to defect to Reform UK as well, and therefore still do the door knocking but for a different party. Another advantage is that Reform UK, and this is a big advantage, they would reduce the risk of selecting candidates with, shall we say, a very, very dodgy past. Because the Tories will have effectively done their vetting for them. You know, let's be honest, Reform have had a bit of a habit of promoting candidates who, on close inspection, have a social media history of some, well, in many cases actually calling for the mass murder of some group or other. It's getting pretty embarrassing that they keep having to drop their candidates, right? So why not just go cuckoo, nick Tory councillors after their own party has checked that there's no obvious skeletons in their closet at any rate. Farage insists that he's standing candidates in every seat at the local elections. Now, in reality, I don't think he is. Remember, they said that ahead of the general election, and that was not the case. I mean, they don't really have the infrastructure to do it without just randomly selecting mad loonies who are inevitably going to have a Facebook history of basically Nazi support, shall we say. So I was surprised if they stand candidates everywhere, but, you know, they need to say that they will, in order to threaten and browbeat existing Tory councillors to defect, basically. So it's worth doing for Farage. Any defections as well, there only needs to be one. I mean, you would think a defection at local council level is not particularly, it would be newsworthy at the local level. It's not really something to stick in the national news, but I bet it would. I bet if a Conservative councillor defected to Reform UK, it would be in the national news. And that would, of course, then put pressure on the new Tory leader, and it would help Farage paint this picture of a new party with momentum. Because one of the main barriers to reform, it's like, because they're so new, they're not seen as a major party, although the general election vote share could change that attitude a little bit. There are probably enough voters who are attracted to Reform UK to gain them way more council seats. But will those voters believe they can win? Will they still see the Tories as the one that's basically going to win anyway? But if Tory councillors defect, and actually, I was thinking about this, which would be better, a big influx of defections in a short period of time, or would it actually be better for a Conservative councillor every week to defect? A little drip of defections? Because the numbers may not be huge, but the media attention would be, because it'd be like, every week there's another defection. Who's going to be the defection this week? It could certainly give the impression of Reform UK getting ready to take over from the Tories. It would force the Tory leader to be like having to constantly deal with this one issue. They'll be there trying to, if they've got their head screwed on, which they probably haven't, but they'll be there trying to sort of focus on the national message and taking on Labour. But in actual fact, they will be focusing entirely on Reform UK, which is actually something Robert Jenrick seemed to want to do anyway. Even if a sober look at the situation just says, well, actually, it's just a handful of councillors defecting. I mean, the Tories have got thousands of them. It's like a handful spread over. But because of the media attention on it, it would be amplified. It would be made to look like a much more serious problem for the Tories than it really is, which will then force the Tory leader to treat it as if it's a much more serious problem than it really is. And the beauty of it is, for everyone else, if it works, the new Tory leader will be forced to address this threat from Reform UK as a top priority. And we know that it doesn't matter whether it's Badenoch or Jenrick who wins, they are almost certainly going to meet that threat by trying to take Farage on at his own game, which is folly. Not only is Farage just personally a way better populist leader than either Jenrick or Badenoch, he's way more experienced as well. He knows what he's doing. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.